you're trying to overcome your addiction to porn and masturbation, fighting the urges, fighting the temptations, and not allowing yourself to give in to them can be one of the biggest hurdles in this uphill battle for you. And if you've been struggling for any length of time, chances are that you have built predetermined, pre-wired patterns of behavior that every time you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, dealing with stress, dealing with anxiety, avoiding difficult situations, whether it's a conversation, work, or something that you're trying to avoid, handling these issues is one of the most challenging and difficult things. You developed these patterns. So in today's episode of The Rebuilt Man, I'm going to give you 5 steps to help you manage, process, and deal with the urges so that you can begin to win this battle, gain victory over your sexual desires, but more importantly, go on to create a 100% porn-free life. For those of you that are new here, my name is Coach Frank Rich, founder of Rebuilt Recovery and host of the Rebuilt Man podcast. It is our mission to help men become better men by quitting porn and rebuilding their lives. And over the last 5 years, we've helped over 1,000 men gain back full control of their lives by removing pornography completely out of their life. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, rate, review, and if you get value out of this episode, make sure to share it with as many people as possible. But how do we manage? How do we fight? How do we not give in to the temptations and urges that are calling us back to pornography? You know, this is one of the things that we hear most common when men are reaching out for counseling, when they're reaching out for coaching or acquiring about some of our services. We take them through an application process to help us identify where they are at in their journey. And the number one thing that we've identified that leads men back into slips, back into relapses, is the urges and temptations just got too strong. Now, I don't believe that the urges were too strong. I believe that they didn't have a plan. They didn't know how to identify their urges. They didn't have tools that will help them in this process. And that's why we put together these 5 steps. We're going to walk you through all 5 of these today and make sure by the end of this episode, you not only know how to manage and handle these urges, but you actually have a vision and a plan moving forward for how you can overcome this addiction for good. The first thing we must do if we are going to succeed at fighting these urges, number 1 here, is to have a predetermined plan. We must know what we're going to do before the issue arises within our lives. We must know how to identify what they are. We must know how to handle them in real time. And we must have a proactive plan once we catch ourselves in those situations. That way you cannot say it happened by accident or the urge was too strong. And without me even knowing or realizing, I was finding myself sliding back in to these old patterns. So gentlemen, we must recognize, lay out, and plan out our predetermined plan before the urges appear within our lives. So after this episode, once we've given you these 5 tools, begin to take action on these things immediately. Create a plan for yourself. Number 2 is we have to be able to identify what our triggers and urges are. I think a lot of men struggle with actually being honest about what triggers them to pornography. It's not that you have a high sex drive. It's not that you're wired differently than other individuals. It's not that you saw a beautiful woman walking down the street, or you saw a beautiful woman at the gym, or you're attracted to Susie across the office. Oftentimes your triggers and urges are going to be states of mind that you find yourself in. They're going to be your emotional states. They're going to be your mental states. They're going to be your spiritual states, and they're going to be your physical states. Now, if you're tired, anxious, lonely, frustrated, and not closely connected to God in the moment, that is a package of unhealthy states. And that's going to be hard to work through. But if you can identify every single time that I'm anxious, every single time that I'm tired, every single time that I'm stressed, this is when these urges of me trying to avoid the things that I'm laying out in front of me. So we must be able to actually define so we can proactively identify what these urges are. So we've created a predetermined plan for ourselves. We know what we're going to do when we catch ourselves in the moments, and we actually know what those moments are. We've defined them and we've gotten clear across the board. This one's going to take some time. It's going to take some self-reflection. It's going to take you growing in your self-awareness. But number two here may be the most valuable for you out of this entire process here. Because if you can know exactly when and where you are most vulnerable and triggered to porn, you can begin to be proactive in avoiding those situations for yourself. Now, once you have the plan and you've laid them out, now it's on building the necessary tools. This is number three, build necessary and better tools to self-regulate yourself in those moments. The stress, anxiety, fear, isolation, that causes a shift in your autonomic nervous system. It puts you into a fight or flight. Elevated heart rate, anxious breathing, shortened breath, perhaps sweating occurs. These are all responses in your physical body. Your physiology is changing, but here's the incredible thing is we have the ability to take control of our nervous system. We have the ability to control and regulate our nervous system. But this takes effort, this takes work, this takes the development of those skills. Meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, breathing, journaling, self-reflection practices will equip you with the tools needed that next time you find yourself in one of those situations, you better know how to handle them. So we created a predetermined plan for ourselves. We know what it is we're going to do when we find ourselves in those situations. We've defined and identified what the real triggers are that drive us back to pornography. And we begin to work on building the necessary skill sets and tools that will allow us to self-regulate ourselves within those moments. Now, once you catch yourself in that situation, number four here is to change your environment. This in and of itself can cause a shift in your physiology. It will change your state of mind. Removing yourself from the anxious, stressful environment of sitting at your desk and getting outside and taking in some fresh air will bring calm and peace into your life. If you're laying in bed, scrolling social media, getting up, going outside for a walk, going downstairs to the kitchen, whatever the case may be, change your environment, change your internal and external surroundings. Now you're forced to navigate life a little bit differently. Now, the changing of the environment will work in the short term, but that's why having the necessary tools to, once you're out of the environment that triggered you and in the new one, you can begin to work through step number three in terms of gaining back control of your nervous system and of your body. So we've had a predetermined plan. We've laid out exactly what it is we're going to do. We've proactively identified the triggers and we define them. We know exactly the situations where we are most vulnerable. We begin to work on building and developing the necessary self-regulation tools to allow us to control our body, control our nervous system, and we've gotten ourselves out of the environments. Number five is to take some deep breaths. Breathe, relax, brother. You will get through this. This trigger, this urge, this is not the end of life for you. You've overcome them before in the past. Now, obviously, you've built yourself to use porn as the pathway out of it. But none of these issues that you're dealing with are going to end this all for you. When you're in a triggered state of mind, you lose prefrontal cortex processing. You've actually lost some of the ability to think rationally and to think logically. Getting control of your breath, bringing that heart rate back down, getting control of that nervous system will allow you to better think rationally, think about why it is you don't want to return back to porn, and maybe who it is you need to connect with. Do you need to call a buddy? Do you need to reach out to your coach? Do you need to connect with a mentor? Do you need to do some self-awareness and journaling? But take a deep breath, brother. This one too will pass. Those 5 steps, once again, is having a predetermined plan, knowing exactly what it is you're going to do when those triggers arise. You've identified and laid out and got proactive on defining what your triggers are. You've worked on developing the necessary tools to self-regulate your autonomic nervous system. You've changed your environment. You've taken a deep, deep, deep breath that will allow you to logically and rationally move forward through this one. Now, stacking some victories up over time. We'll begin to build the confidence. We'll begin to build the momentum. We'll begin to help you create the identity of the man that doesn't allow these things to control him, control his life. And brother, that's the process to getting free from this addiction once and for all. Now, if you're struggling with knowing what to do outside of handling the urges, how to create a life that is porn free, we put together free training on the 12 steps that have helped over 1,000 men at this point gain back full control of their lives by removing pornography completely out of it. If you visit rebuiltrecovery.com/12 steps, you can put your email address in and get access to the training right away. But brother, I believe in you. And I want you to believe in yourself. Thousands of men every single day are gaining victory in this fight, and you are the next one. Coach Frank Rich at the Rebuilt Man Podcast. We love you guys. Rate, review, subscribe. Make sure to share this, and we will see you in the next one.